By the 1760s, Boston was one of the busiest cities in British North America. Ships filled the harbor and streets were alive with trade and people. Life seemed normal on the surface, but tension was growing. The city was thriving and changing fast. Within a few decades, it would face revolution and become part of a new nation. Boston in the 1700s was busy and full of life. Ships came from faraway ports and goods were traded. People moved through streets, carrying supplies and working. Life looked ordinary, but the city was slowly growing. The harbor and streets shaped how Boston would become a major city. Boston's story began in 1630 with settlers arriving from England. John Winthrop led the fleet to Massachusetts Bay. They saw a new and unknown land, ready to build homes and communities. Every step they took marked the start of a future city. This was the beginning of Boston. This was Boston's first meeting house, built in 1632. It was simple, but very important for daily life. People came to pray, meet, and discuss community matters. It stood near today's State Street. Even in its simplicity, it shaped the early city and its future growth. At this time, Boston was still a small, quiet town. Life moved slowly, and streets were muddy with small wooden houses lining them. Ships arrived at the harbor with goods. The future was uncertain, but the settlement was starting to grow. These early days laid the roots for Boston's later success. By the early 1720s, Boston had grown into a busy port. Ships from Europe and the Caribbean filled the harbor. People unloaded goods and moved along the streets. Church steeples marked neighborhoods, and life was organized around trade. The city was no longer small. It was a growing hub of commerce and activity. Long Wharf was a main hub for Boston's trade. Ships unloaded goods, and passengers arrived from overseas. Merchants and workers moved quickly along the pier. This pier connected the city to the wider Atlantic world. It showed how Boston was growing into an important port. Boston Light was the first lighthouse in America, built in 1716. It guided ships safely into the harbor. Ships coming from Europe or the Caribbean could see its light after long voyages. The lighthouse marked the city as an important port. It still stands today as a reminder of early Boston. Castle William guarded Boston Harbor in the early 1700s. Cannons and soldiers protected the city from potential threats. Ships entering the harbor were reminded of British control. The fort showed the power and presence of the empire. Boston was both a busy port and a watched city. Harvard College was already an important center in the early 1700s. Students learned, lived, and studied in small buildings like Faneuil Hall and Massachusetts Hall. The college trained future leaders for the colony. Life was quiet but full of learning. It was a foundation for Boston's educated community. The old State House was the center of government in Boston. Laws were debated and taxes announced here. People gathered outside to hear proclamations. Soldiers were present to enforce authority. It was a hub of civic life and growing tension before the Revolution. Boston Common was a central public space in the 1760s. People walked, animals grazed, and soldiers drilled nearby. Life went on even as tension grew. The Province House overlooked the Common, showing British authority. Ordinary life and government presence shared the same space. The Green Dragon Tavern was more than a place to drink. People met quietly to plan and talk. Merchants and workers shared ideas and strategies. Conversations here shaped early resistance. The city was preparing for change, even if it wasn't obvious outside. In December 1773, colonists boarded ships and threw tea into the harbor. They wore disguises to hide their identities. This was a serious act of protest against taxes. No celebration, just a clear message. Boston was moving closer to open resistance. The tea sank into Boston Harbor quietly. It was not a celebration. The act sent a strong message. Colonists showed they would resist unfair laws. The event moved Boston closer to revolution. Every step mattered. Faneuil Hall was a central meeting place in the 1770s. People came to discuss taxes and government policies. Merchants, workers, and citizens shared ideas and debated. It was where frustration turned into action. The hall shaped public opinion and fueled early resistance. Boston was preparing for change. Christ Church, built in 1723, was a familiar landmark in Boston's North End. People came to worship and go about daily life. It stood quietly before the city changed. The church was part of the community and a steady presence. Even small streets and harbors nearby shaped life around it. The Province House was the official residence of British governors. Soldiers trained nearby while townspeople went about daily life. The building showed the presence of British authority in Boston. Life went on around it, but tension was growing. Ordinary spaces and power existed side by side. The city was changing slowly. Boston streets were full of trade and activity in the 1770s. Ships arrived with goods from overseas. People worked, carried supplies, and talked along roads. Life seemed normal, but unrest was growing. Everyday work mixed with political tension. The city was moving toward a new chapter. In 1775, Boston Harbor was full of ships and goods. People worked quietly along docks, moving cargo. The city seemed calm, but tension was in the air. Trade continued as usual, even as events moved toward conflict. Everyday life mixed with the anticipation of change. Boston was on the edge of history. Near the old State House, people went about daily life. Soldiers patrolled while citizens watched carefully. Shops stayed open, children played, and announcements were made. Tension was quiet but present. Public opinion was forming. The city was preparing for revolution even in ordinary streets. Boston Common was a place for everyone in the 1770s. Soldiers drilled, animals grazed, and people walked daily paths. Children played quietly nearby. The Province House overlooked the Common, showing authority. Life continued even as unrest grew. Ordinary and official worlds existed side by side. Inside the Green Dragon Tavern, people met quietly to plan. Merchants, workers, and citizens discussed ideas. These talks shaped early resistance. It was a secret place where strategy formed. Ordinary spaces helped the city prepare for change. Conversations here mattered. In December 1773, colonists boarded ships and dumped tea into Boston Harbor. They wore disguises to hide their identities. It was a serious act of protest, not a celebration. Every step was deliberate. Boston was moving closer to revolution. Their message was clear. The tea sank quietly into Boston Harbor. It was not meant as a celebration. The colonists sent a strong message. Every act mattered. Resistance was growing. Boston was stepping toward revolution, one deliberate action at a time. By the early 1780s, Boston was starting to recover after the war. Streets were being rebuilt and shops reopened. People worked, children played, and soldiers still patrolled lightly. Life was returning, slowly but surely. The city was healing and getting ready for a new era. Boston Harbor came back to life after the war. Ships arrived with goods and merchants worked on the piers. People carried supplies and traded along streets. The city was thriving again. Life returned to a busy port. Boston was ready to grow once more. Harvard College continued after the Revolution. Students studied and walked the courtyard quietly. Massachusetts Hall had survived and remained important. Learning and education went on, shaping future leaders. The campus was calm, reflecting hope for the city's future. Boston's foundations were still strong. The old State House still stood after the Revolution. Streets were rebuilt and daily life returned. Soldiers were gone, and people walked freely. The city adjusted to independence. Life continued, and history remained visible. Boston was now a free city. Boston Common stayed as the city's heart. People walked, children played, and animals grazed. The city had survived the war, and life returned. The Province House remained a reminder of history. Common was a shared space for everyone. Boston was moving forward. Faneuil Hall continued to be the city's center. Merchants sold goods, and people gathered for discussions. Civic life returned alongside trade. The hall remained important for Boston's community. Meetings, debates, and market life all happened here. It stayed a hub of daily life. Old North Church still stood after the Revolution. People went about daily life around it. The church remained a neighborhood landmark. Streets were rebuilt, but history stayed. Life moved forward, yet the city remembered its past. Boston balanced change and continuity. Long Wharf came back to life after the Revolution. Ships carried goods and dock workers unloaded them. Merchants and townspeople returned to their routines. Boston's port was busy again, trade was flowing, and the city was growing stronger. Life returned to the harbor. Castle William was rebuilt after the war. Soldiers trained lightly and the fort protected the harbor. The city returned to peace but kept its defenses. Life continued on land and sea. Boston remembered its history while moving forward. The fort remained a city landmark. Boston's streets and harbor were busy again. People worked, children played, and trade resumed. Buildings had been rebuilt after the Revolution. Life returned, and the city was thriving. Boston showed resilience and hope. Everyday life continued, marking a new beginning. Faneuil Hall remained a center of life after the war. Merchants sold goods, and citizens gathered nearby. Children played while streets buzzed quietly. Life was peaceful but active. The city continued its daily routines. Boston was thriving again. Boston Harbor returned to busy life. Ships docked and workers unloaded goods. Merchants sold items while townspeople walked streets. Life was lively but calm. The port showed Boston's resilience. Trade and daily work continued steadily. Old North Church stayed a landmark for the neighborhood. People moved around daily life quietly. Children played and streets were rebuilt. The church anchored the community. History and life continued side by side. Boston balanced past and present. Castle William was rebuilt and still protected the harbor. Soldiers trained lightly, and life returned to calm. The fort reminded the city of its past. The harbor was busy again. History and recovery existed together. Boston was strong and steady. Boston had survived the Revolution and rebuilt its city. Streets and harbor were busy with life. People worked, played, and traded. Historic landmarks stood strong. Life continued while remembering the past. The city was thriving and ready for the future.